since I'm half blind and the print is very small. I'll have to do it like this, and you have to bear with me because I'm not a native English speaker. And for some reason, when I start reading my own I do write in English, this book was written in English. When I start reading it, I get a German accent. That's what Bruce told me. Otherwise, my accent is not so German, you know. Anyway, this book was written some years ago, but it's the only book that I have now available in English. No? It has been translated in Italian, in Serbian. And you can, I shouldn't say it, you can find it also online because lately I publish everything also online. And it's a book which is illustrated with a street artist, a very talented street artist. You know, this is like her. She read the book. She was very young. And when Bruce came to Belgrade, he found her like she was tagging the Belgrade streets with women characters, like, you know, like with Virginia Woolf and stuff like that. And we were like, and he found out, like, who's this woman? So she went online, we went online, and you know, I never knew who she was. And we found out that she was a girl of 16, 17, who was the daughter of one of my best friends. But of course, because it's one of those things that you go to jail, huh? If you tag the streets, even with the small characters, you know. So, and then we asked her to do this. I was writing the thing. And, well, yeah, I'm going to read them. You know, we don't read so much in Europe, I must say, when we do book presentations, because people just talk to authors more than you read alone in your own room, I guess. And then you have the opportunity to talk to people who, so I'm not very used to reading, you know. Okay, this is all excuses, and I'll do it. She sat on the bank of the river Nile like any common peasant woman. Her feet were in the water, her hands were bare, absorbing the sun on a chilly winter day. Her thoughts were everywhere. Her life had come to a turning point, not by her own choice or timing, but she had to take action. Women hate that kind of compulsion, to act unnaturally against a lifetime's proper times and rhythms, but they do it efficiently and often irreversibly. During all the years of her rule, her life has been a hazard every day, every instant of her reign pitched against the world as it was. After years of slow reaction against the sun power, the balance of forces had toppled. She had given the dynasty 6 daughters. After the 3rd daughter, she thought only of women in power, no fathers, no husbands, no sons. She bore another 3 daughters, and not even her innermost self knew their father. She simply refused to know, to follow any dates. Her life was full and fulfilled. She entertained no hopes or expectations. Her future would be one long strain not to let go. A life without a male heir to count on, but with many men to fear. Another anomaly added to the many in her destiny. Every day, at sunset, the auburn sunsets of the Nile, with the yellow reflections of dust, destiny conveyed its simple message to her. I have survived another day in beauty, truth, and heresy. Her beauty combined truth and heresy, the inner truth of the sun, the outer power of the sun. All the rest is fiction. Sitting on the banks of Nile was the woman by the name of Nefertiti, the most powerful woman in Amarna, the solar queen, consort of a deposed ruler, bathing her legs and sunbathing her arms, long limbs, long head, tiny body. Absolute beauty might be seen in her. She could be anywhere. So now I'll skip and read another passage. Actually, it's a book you can read from the beginning to the end, any part open. We call it bibliomancia in Italian, that you can open the book and read passages and like compose it, and like as if a book predicts its own narration instead you as an author putting it together. Nefertiti wanted to be her own maidservant. The only person she envied in her kingdom was her handmaid. The young maid's name was Nefertiti too, for she had been renamed after a goddess. Her earlier name and history had been erased. Service to Nefertiti was her only occupation. She was a harem child. born in seclusion from the eyes of the male world, given over for training in sacred service. The girl was youthfully pretty and as dark of skin as Akhenaton's father, and though she shared a name with her queen, no one would have mistaken their looks. They lived together day and night. Nefertiti, the maid, undressed, washed, adored Nefertiti, the queen. Nefertiti, the queen, envied every act of service that girl Nefertiti offered her. Simple private acts of dressing and undressing were denied a reigning queen. More to the point, a queen could not undress another person. Even her infants had been swiftly taken to be dressed by the nursemaids. The queen jealously watched her small Nefertiti bending and collecting royal garments as they dropped down to the floor. She would air them and fold them with care. The girl's hands had the craft of an artist. She would gracefully dice fruit, arrange the bits on a plate. When the queen ate the fruit, she saw the maid's mouth move with pleasure. The sight of that robbed her of all feeling. Later in her life, the fallen queen was allowed to feed a man with her bare hands. Beck, the sculptor, who let her sometimes cut his fruit in tiny pieces and feed him, bit by bit, from her fingertips. But then she was nearly blind. But she could wield the small knife very slowly, testing its cutting edge with a sensual fingertip, holding the fruit in taut anticipation before slicing into it. He had to risk sharing his home with a blind woman with a blade, day by day, night by night. That was what was left of her royal ease and pleasure. A blind woman had become her own blind maidservant. She could still recall life as a goddess before becoming merely human. She always remembered the best while holding a knife with a sharp cutting edge. Nefertiti never owned her own life, and now that she is dying, she knows it. The force of death upon her is so great and irresistible that she realizes that she had always lived on sufferance. The life of a queen, the life of any woman, is as frail as a spider web, invisible thread sticky with her own spittle, taut with her own spike, a web of illusions. Only immediate danger, terrifying force can shake her from the center of that web. A kingdom that was also a family claimed a total ownership of Nefertiti's life, all of them acting, of course, out of love and care. Having been born among them, she was also owned, all of them, as long as she might live. It would be presumptuous to feel bad or long for death. Weeping was prohibited in queens and goddesses. Royal weeping made empires crumble. The common people suffered. The only way to possess herself was to end her life by her own hand. But this escape was prevented more than once, and she was also glad for that. The scars became memories of those moments when she had really existed. She lost her eye and her ear. The left side of her lovely head was forfeit to her passions. Such disfigurement was a major shame and curse to her reign. She lost her shapely head as an irresponsible wild woman who had dared take back her life. She owned herself in those few disfiguring moments of unrestrainable personal energy. Such a monster must be done away for good. A powerful bird, no, a huge bat was squatting over her slumbering face, with his fierce claws gouging into her chest. The bat meant to pluck out her heart alive, carried, still beating, into the distant realm of the dead. Many years later, in an empty tomb where a queen might have been buried, a swarm of bats emerged when man first broke into the doors. "Look at the bird flying, little one," says the queen to her handmaid. "What is this metal bird? It looks as if mummified, as if made of gold and stuffed with sand, flying to some other star." "It is a silver crane, my queen, but she sings no bird song, just one long, deafening drone. Her wings are stiff. She will fall from the sky. She will fall. She must fall. She flies, my fair queen. We cannot see her. We cannot hear her. But she is there in another sky. She's alive, and she's singing her loud song and flying." Nefertiti, the damaged queen, her left eye blank and white, her chipped ear bent as if missing. Surely she is blind, almost dead. The bird follows. The sun, as a sunflower does, pursuing the passage of time. The solar queen sees an aircraft over Egypt. No maidservant would dare to contradict the goddess. Better to lie to her and call it a living bird. A girl is playing in the desert 30 centuries later. A bird, distant airplane, an old queen, a young servant, a woman thoughtfully bathes her feet at the banks of the Nile, Nefertiti herself, the sound of her name. The bird and the plane were one, the figures of God, the past and the future. The sky was one as well, the sun that touches everything. Common women do not dream of leading common lives. Uncommon women do. They're lucky in life and lucky to have such dreams. Common women do not have such luck or such dreams. Common women are the owners of their own lives, even less than the queens are, though in a different way. When one has little, a small gain seems a great deal. And if one is reduced to nothingness, there is a freedom. There is only a void that only a void can reveal. Egypt's common women rarely sought to kill themselves using their own hands. They were already being killed day by their own lives. A death by deprivation as invisible and forbidden as in a suicidal desire. What can we know of these women? Obscurities in the grand shadow of their queen Nefertiti? They too were there, and they did nothing that left a trace in male history. Nefertiti broke with history as a queen, mother of 6 daughters, and a wife of a man who turned into a woman. But Nefertiti, as her own personality, the possessor of her own being, lost, trapped, and thoroughly vanished as any woman of any time. And yet, Nefertiti was there. Okay, how much time do I have? I just read the passage, so should I go on a little bit? So this book, I'll tell you a little bit about the book. You know, there's some kind of time travel also. Bruce says, I keep quoting Bruce all the time. He's in his hometown, so he when he read it the first time, he said it's also a science fiction novel. Of course, I'm not a science fiction writer at all. I hardly read it, you know. But I was in Egypt, and I grew up in Egypt, you know, and I had this immediate experience of living with, you know, the smells, the sounds. And Nefertiti is an extremely present, how to say, myth, as opposed to Cleopatra, which is not. You know, Cleopatra is just somebody invented by Western culture much more, and she was Greek, you know, of course. And Nefertiti instead is something that you still see women looking like her. It's a name which is everywhere, you know. You have kids who are called Nefertiti, you know. Everybody's looking for her grave still. The model of beauty, as you know, it's still existent. And I was like hugely impressed and I think traumatized by this present. I came from another country of the world. And only many years later, you know, when my empire fell in Yugoslavia, you know, I realized, reading through history, and also, you know, you can't, you know everything about Cleopatra, but you know nothing about Nefertiti. Nothing, you know, all the records. I read so many books. I went in so many countries, you know. I can say that after writing this book, there's nothing untrue here, but you can't guarantee there is anything true. I had to reinvent her. And that was very interesting for me because she was, 14th century BC. It was the 19th dynasty. Women had, in a way, more freedom than they had after Christianism, after, you know, in like 10th century after Christ, you know. And it was very interesting to find out that she could be basically, she was a sun queen, she was maybe the first feminist queen, you know, female queen at least. She was also a feminist, you know, at the time, you know, not only her, but that was the first environment. There were not aggressive societies. There were many common things that you could really apply to you could identify, I would say. And when I gave her, like, my voice, and I had some readers, especially from US, you know, and some were also famous writers, you know, quite famous, you know, there was some kind of science fiction or maybe New Age writers, you know, and they wrote to me and said that, did you hear her voice while you were writing? And I said, well, yeah, of course, you know, it's like, that's how you write. You hear the voice of you know, characters you write. They can be criminal, they can be, you know, they can be, but usually it's, and they said, okay, we think you're her reincarnation. And I didn't know that, you know, I said, well, you know, I might be, but for me to be too much, to be, I'm happy with what I experienced, and writing this book, and it was a great experience to write it. It was really so, usually, I like it, writing books more than editing them, publishing them, but this was one of that I really liked best. I enjoyed best. So, and it also, it's I would write, and I'll read a very short piece, it has, it goes through, through these 30 centuries actually, I skip here and there, but I do have a continuity, and as I said, nothing is untrue. The chisel. Would you betray me with me? She asked him. Does God exist? He countered. You have to give me an answer. Does love exist? People in love exist. Would you betray me with me? No, I would not. Why? Am I not attractive enough? Your thoughts are dangerous, he tells her firmly. Where is the chisel? She asks after a silent moment. I will give it back to you, he promises. When will you give it? I can't stand you when you take my things from me. Your things are always yours, while mine are ours. That was my chisel. And the baby? Part of the baby is mine, mine, mine. And that part of him that's mine is always mine, until I'm dead. And then he can be whatever he wants. But he is yours as well as mine, in every moment. That is a problem. It's his problem. I will never give you back that chisel. It is our common chisel, and for now it happens to be with me. If you need it, then ask for it. When do you ever need a chisel for? It is me who does all the repairs. She made a few steps toward the door. Tears were already falling. She tripped headlong over the infant's toy. Her head crushes into the edge of the windowsill. Her forehead was badly cut, bleeding. Her eyes were oozing, and her stricken face seemed to stare from another dimension. The bleeding cut mixing with tears. She sat heavily on the floor. The sun was falling on her. Her eyesight was blurred. She didn't clean the tears and blood which pattered on the floorboards. He was looking at her electrified, but he didn't want to intervene. She felt free now. Although she did not flee to the door, she said, "This is my chisel, and if you do not give it to me immediately, I will take away the child from you." "I will call the doctor," he said. "No need. I can do everything by myself." "Another commonplace remark," he said. She stood up alone, rising without his help. He felt abandoned, unloved. He watched as she cleaned her wound from the water from the sting, trying to clear her blood-clotted hair, dabbing at the trail of blood down her blouse and over her breast. He decided to return the chisel to where it had been before, but without telling her. Okay, now I'll read the very end, and that's going to be it. Nefertiti, my beloved friend, you're long gone, mere fragments of data in this stupid yet intelligent time. I, your distant artist, may have damaged your image, your highness, your holiness. Perhaps I lied about you, but from my thoughts and wanderings, I gave you a life I thought you perhaps deserved. There are common moments when all women are queens out of power. This was our story, which has come to an end. The passage of time, the universal police raid, has parted us and set us within our separate cells. Two inmates serving time in our eternal presence, until we hack some hole to the texture of eternity, until we push our fingers, hands, kisses, words through that, creating the loving bond uniting women. May the love of my Nefertiti, the dream felt since my childhood, shield all that is good and worthy, and star in me. So let it be.